In tonight's news edition, His Majesty says Jordan belongs to everyone and assures a meeting of the country's leaderships that the Jordanian armed forces stands ready to confront and overcome any threat to the homeland. The UN Middle East envoy announces an agreement has been reached at the UN Security Council with Palestinian and Israeli officials to allow reconstruction work to begin in the Gaza Strip. And Kurdish Peshmerga make advances against Islamic State terrorists in Zuma region, and the US President meets with the newly named Special Presidential Envoy for the Global Coalition against the ISIL. Good evening and very warm welcome to the news. Jordan's position is unwavering, where extremism and terrorism that threatens the security and stability of the region and the entire world is involved, said His Majesty the King, and assured the state's leaderships that the kingdom is steadfast in the face of threats and challenges. The meeting at Al-Husseiniya Palace with heads of 3 branches of government as well as other national and religious leaderships aimed to, in the King's words, to assure everyone of Jordan's capability to confront and overcome all sorts of challenges. We are in a good position and I am optimistic about a better future, he said. His Majesty stressed that Jordan must support regional and international efforts in countering terrorism and extremism to protect the kingdom's higher interests. He said tremendous efforts and resources are being deployed to restrain terrorists and their supporters and to dry up their financial resources in order to protect neighboring countries facing the threat of division and exploitation. To this end, His Majesty said Jordan is in constant coordination with world capitals and decision makers to arrive at durable solutions to ongoing crises in those countries, while reiterating that Jordan Armed Forces' readiness to safeguard the homeland and its security. His Majesty said confronting terrorism must be a collective effort, noting that Islam, a religion of moderation, as well as Christianity, are being targeted and tarnished by extremists. The King urged scholars, intellectuals and the media to stand firm against extremist groups and prevent their attempts to distort Islam and hijack the future of upcoming generations. King Abdullah said Jordan has a long track record in such efforts, naming a number of initiatives that he launched to combat radical and fanatic views. Jordan belongs to everyone, and we must all work seriously to protect our country, King Abdullah urged, adding that the kingdom will remain the refuge to all who seek security among Arab brothers and will continue to defend Arab Christians, being the model of coexistence that it is. On Syria, King Abdullah again said the only end to the bloodshed is through a political solution that maintains the unity and integrity of the country and prevents it from sliding into a failed state scenario. And on the situation in Iraq, he said Jordan will continue to stand by Iraq, promoting a comprehensive political process that is inclusive of all political parties, also to ensure national conciliation and unity. On Jordan ties with Gulf states, His Majesty said the kingdom is considered a buffer zone for both Gulf and Arab states, reminding the meeting that the Jordanian armed forces carry the badge of the Arab army that stands ready to defend all Arabs. An agreement was reached during a meeting at the UN Security Council to allow reconstruction work to begin in the war-torn Gaza Strip, with the UN monitoring the use of materials. UN Middle East envoy Robert Sari announced the deal following a meeting with Israeli and Palestinian officials. 50 days of conflict in Gaza between Hamas and Israel, which ended late last month, has left swathes of the Mediterranean enclave in ruins. The Palestinian Authority said in a study recently that the reconstruction work would cost $7.8 billion, 2.5 times Gaza's gross domestic product, including $2.5 billion for the reconstruction of homes and $250 million for energy.
I am pleased to announce to the Security Council that my office, UNSCO, has brokered a trilateral agreement between Israel, the Palestinian Authority and the United Nations to enable work at the scale required in the Strip, involving the private sector in Gaza and giving a lead role to the Palestinian Authority in the reconstruction effort, while providing security assurances through UN monitoring that these materials will not be diverted from their entirely civilian purpose. Arriving at this agreement has not been without its challenges. We consider this temporary mechanism, which must get up and running without delay, as an important step towards the objective of lifting all remaining closures and a signal of hope to the people of Gaza.
Senior UN officials visiting Syrian refugees in Lebanon's Bekaa region called for the international community to assist the Lebanese government in dealing with the refugee crisis. Administrator of the UNDP, Helen Clark, and UNHCR High Commissioner Antonio Guterres went to Deir al-Ahmar in West Bekaa and launched an appeal to the international community for massive support to Lebanon and to the local communities. According to the United Nations, Syrian refugees registered in neighboring countries reached 3 million. The biggest number, of approximately 1.17 million, are in Lebanon.
Lebanese population is Syrian. The impact in the country is huge, and of course the security concerns with the recent incidents have also dramatically increased. This is the moment in which the international community needs to understand that to preserve the stability of Lebanon is in everybody's interest, is in the interest of global peace and security, and that requires massive investment, not only investment in humanitarian aid to the refugees, but investment in Lebanon to help the local communities cope with this challenge.
In Syria, meanwhile, Islamic State fighters shot down a Syrian warplane using anti-aircraft guns outside their stronghold of Raqqa city, 400 kilometers northeast of Damascus. It was the first time the group has downed a military jet since declaring its cross-border caliphate in June. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported 5 air raids on Raqqa today. The Syrian Air Force has been bombing Islamic State-controlled territory in Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor on a daily basis since the group seized the Iraqi city of Mosul back in June. Yesterday, forces launched an operation in the eastern outskirts of Damascus to dislodge rebel forces from one of their last remaining strongholds. The offensive in the Jobar district marks the beginning of a government campaign to secure the capital against rebel attacks and to regain key infrastructure and transport routes to the city's eastern periphery. And we stay in Syria, where state media reported a meeting between Iraq's National Security Advisor Falih al-Fayed and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad on efforts to counter Islamic State. It was the first such meeting since the United States launched airstrikes on the radical group in Iraq. The state news agency SANA stated that Fayed put President Bashar al-Assad in the picture of the latest developments in Iraq and the efforts that the Iraqi government and people are making to combat the terrorists. Syrian state television aired footage of President Bashar al-Assad and Fayed holding talks in Damascus. It said that President al-Assad told Fayed efforts to counter terrorism must start with pressure on the state that support and finance terrorists. In Iraq, the US Air Force intervention has helped Kurdish Peshmerga forces take advances against the terrorist group IS in Zumar region, north of the country. Yesterday, the US military hit several targets near Baghdad in the effort to help the Iraqi government win back territory seized by the Islamic State. The offensive is the first expansion of the United States campaign against the Islamist militant group that Obama outlined last week in a speech to the nation. Here's more.
This is one of the Peshmerga fighters' front lines. These Kurdish forces have made modest advances against Islamic State here in the Zuma region, which is around 60 kilometers from Mosul. It was specifically the US support from the air that helped bolster these Kurds.
In coordination with the Air Force, we told them, the US Air Force, we told them we have an operation in this area and we gave them the coordinates. And they helped us and their support was very good. We were satisfied. It's very effective during our troops' push.
Destroyed homes and burnt out vehicles are evidence of the battle. In all, just 10 kilometers of land was reclaimed from Islamic State. IS now stretches across large swathes of Iraq and Syria. The pressure is on for Western states to do more. In Paris, leaders from 30 countries, including the Arab governments, have pledged their backing for a coordinated campaign against IS. France has offered to take part in airstrikes in Iraq, although the details are still not clear. Here in the UAE, France sends jets on a reconnaissance mission to Iraq, a step towards becoming the first ally to join the US-led air campaign there. Neither the Syrian nor Iranian government was invited to join the coalition talks in Paris. But without a unified strategy, it's unclear whether more airstrikes will be able to defeat the IS without the support of Iran or Syria.
In Washington, meanwhile, U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said the United States is not preparing to unleash a shock and awe campaign of overwhelming airstrikes in Syria against Islamic State fighters. General Martin Dempsey said as long as ISIL enjoys a safe haven in Syria, it will remain a formidable force and a threat. While U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel is in testifying before the Senate Armed Services Committee, said the fight against the Islamic State will take time.
This won't look like a shock and awe campaign because that's simply not how ISIL is organized, but it will be a persistent and sustainable campaign. I want to emphasize that our military actions must be part of a whole-of-government effort that works to disrupt ISIL financing, interdict the movement of foreign fighters across borders, and undermine the ISIL message.
All four elements of this strategy require a significant commitment of resources on the part of the United States and our coalition partners. Mr. Chairman, I think everyone on this committee understands fully this will not be an easy or a brief effort. It is complicated. We're at war with ISIL as we are with Al-Qaeda. But destroying ISIL will require more than military efforts alone. It will require political progress in the region and effective partners on the ground in Iraq and Syria.
U.S. President Barack Obama, meanwhile, met with retired Marine Corps General John Allen at the White House after he was named the Special Presidential Envoy for the Global Coalition against the IS. A former top U.S. commander in Afghanistan, Allen will coordinate international efforts to fight Islamic State terrorists in Iraq and Syria. Allen worked as a commander in Iraq and as deputy head of U.S. Central Command, which controls U.S. forces in the region. Since leaving the military in 2013, he has worked as an advisor to the Secretary of State and the Defense Secretary. He also has been a special U.S. envoy on security issues in talks between the Palestinians and Israelis. 6 Egyptian policemen were killed and 2 others were wounded when a roadside bomb exploded as they passed through a volatile part of northern Sinai in an armored convoy. Militants in Sinai have stepped up attacks on policemen and soldiers since then Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi toppled President Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood in July last year. Over to the Ebola crisis, and United Nations officials said the unprecedented outbreak in West Africa requires a $1 billion response to keep it spread, saying the crisis is unparalleled in recent times. According to the World Health Organization, the virus has killed around 2,500, half of those infected by the virus, and the toll has doubled in the last month. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon will launch a global response coalition in New York on Thursday.
Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this health crisis we face is unparalleled in modern times. The gravity of the situation is difficult to get across with just a few numbers, but with 5,000 now infected, twice the number when we met a couple of weeks ago, over 2,500 dead, nearly twice the number of when we met a couple of weeks ago. And what we're seeing, what began as an Ebola outbreak in these countries 6 months ago, or in one of these countries, and then became an Ebola crisis, has now become a health sector crisis and a larger crisis of essential services in these countries and social services.
And to ramp up its response to the Ebola crisis, The United States said it plans to build 17 treatment centers, train thousands of healthcare workers, and establish a military control center for coordination. The stepped-up effort will include 3,000 military forces and a joint forces command center in Monrovia, capital of Liberia, to coordinate efforts with the U.S. government and other international partners. The U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, will also support a program to distribute protection kits with sanitizers and medical supplies to 400,000 vulnerable households in Liberia. In Afghanistan, a suicide car bomber killed at least 3 foreign troops in an attack on a convoy near the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. The blast, which also killed 13 Afghan civilians, tore through cars and shattered shop windows on the road a few hundred meters from the main embassy gate. The incident comes amid a month-long political stalemate and an emboldened insurgency, with a presidential election still unresolved. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. And over to Ukraine. The European Parliament ratified a landmark agreement on political association and trade with Ukraine. The agreement, whose ratification was synchronized with that of the Ukrainian Parliament in Kiev, won a majority in favor from the Parliament members who participated in the vote. European Parliament President Martin Schulz hailed the vote as a historic moment. Under the agreement, Ukraine will continue to enjoy privileged access to the EU market until January the 1st of next year, but in a concession by Brussels, it will not have to cut duties on imports from the EU in return. Russia, which says its economy could be badly hurt by a sudden flood of duty-free EU goods onto its market via Ukraine, had threatened to slap import tariffs on Ukrainian goods from November the 1st, arguing that the pact would squeeze it out of the Ukrainian market. Yeah. To the world of style and London Fashion Week. British luxury fashion brand Anna Hindmarch went back to school in spectacular style for the final day of the Fashion Week. Her Spring-Summer 2015 show was inspired by the idea of taking stickers that she said were her schoolgirl version of personalization on her school bags. The colourful show featured embassy or embossed handbags, many featuring a cartoon-like stickers and placements which the designer said acted as graffiti. Her show, entitled Fixation, also featured spinning neon teacups and glow-in-the-dark skeletons. And earlier, British luxury brand Burberry dominated the catwalk at Kensington Gardens. Unlike most shows, there was no tottering along the catwalk in heels for the models, as they all wore flat shoes. The show was very colourful, with many of the clothes having an artisan look with bold patterns. Big bow belts, tulle and sheer tops and skirts were prominently on display. Wildflowers swirled across dresses and insects were even seen on the signature trench alongside feather-light dresses. The summertime theme was enhanced with models arriving in a dizzying rainbow spectrum of colours, including deep red, burnt orange, purples, ochres and emerald green. Barcelona hope to see a growing connection between strikers Lionel Messi and Neymar when they host Cypriot side Apoel Nicosia in their Champions League Group F opener tomorrow. New coach Luis Enrique took over this summer from Gerardo Martino with a brief to improve on last term's elimination in the quarter-finals by Atletico Madrid. Hopes are high for silverware this year after the club's heavy spending in the transfer window. Ajax Amsterdam are also preparing for their Champions League Group F match against Paris Saint-Germain in the Amsterdam Arena tomorrow. Frank de Boer's side face a difficult task getting out of a group which includes Barcelona and Apoel Nicosia as well as the French champions. Central defender Joel Veltman will be the man trying to stop Swedish striker Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But Niklas Moisander told journalists that the only way to defend against Ibrahimovic is as a whole team. And Chelsea manager Jose Mourinho said his side must do everything they can to qualify for the next stage of the Champions League and avoid the chance for dropping down into the Europa League. His comments came ahead of Chelsea's opening Group G match against Schalke 04 at Stamford Bridge tomorrow.
From this moment, I don't win one more single match in the Champions League. My history is there. I won it twice, and I think that's fantastic. And it's a question to be proud. But do I want to try to win again? Of course I want. Of course I want. I have so many years ahead of me in terms of career. Obviously I have the ambition to win it again. But in this moment I only think about don't play Europa League.
Chelsea manager Jose Mourinho. Now, a look at the weather forecast. Cool tonight across the hilly areas and fair elsewhere in the country with northwesterly fresh winds. Tomorrow, a slight rise in temperatures will create fair weather in most regions with the appearance of low clouds in the northern and central regions. It will be fair or hotter in the Jordan Valley with high temperatures soaring to the high 30s at the southernmost parts of the valley. And further south, the port of Aqaba should expect a hot day with northerly fresh winds and slightly high seas. Now a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. Now our top stories once again. His Majesty says Jordan belongs to everyone and assures a meeting of the country's leaderships that the Jordanian armed forces stands ready to confront and overcome any threat to the homeland. The UN Middle East envoy announces an agreement has been reached at the UN Security Council with Palestinian and Israeli officials to allow reconstruction work to begin in the Gaza Strip. And Kurdish Peshmerga make advances against Islamic State terrorists in Zuma region, and the US President meets with the newly named Special Presidential Envoy for the Global Coalition against the ISIL. And that's the end of tonight's news. Thank you so much for your company.